Hey, single, saved, and celibate and worth the wait members. It is Bonnie Leahy again. And I said I was going to finish this video. Okay. Well, let me try it this way. I don't know. I think it looked better the other way. I don't know. Anyhow, I asked the question, have you ever been angry at God because he took too long to send your mate? Have you ever felt like God rejected you? And why did he say no? And I did get a few responses, but I'd kind of like to tell my story because I don't believe I'm the only one. And if I am, then I'm preaching to me. It's okay. Maybe it's not my whole story. You might not have the exact story as mine, but we have the same feelings sometimes. You know, I had my children out of wedlock because I was a child of I was born in 1959. But I was a teenager in the 70s, and they told us if it felt good, do it. And then if you loved them, it wasn't wrong. It wasn't like it is today, because there was still expected monogamy, even if you weren't married. But it was okay not to be married. But I knew what the Bible said, and I never really felt right about it. I did it anyway. I compromised to be with a man, and I ended up having 3 babies. Not 1, not 2, but 3. I love them all. I don't regret one of them. That was not a wise decision in some people's eyes. And that may cause some of you to look down on me. I don't know. But I was in my 20s. And it was a whole different world then. And I had got saved at 18. But I backslid because I was more interested in finding love than finding God at the time. Well, all of those crazy mistakes with men, and every bit of that ended by 27. 26, I gave birth to my last baby, and at 27, I got filled with the Holy Spirit. And I knew that I was not going to live that life anymore. Now, did I have temptation? Yes. Did I have men after me? Oh, yes. Especially after that, which was crazy to me. Where were you when I was the sinner? But you show up when I get saved. But anyway, but here's the deal. I raised my children. I was 27 years old by myself. And I thought maybe by the time I was 30, I'd meet someone. And maybe by the time I'm 35, I'd meet someone. And I'll tell you, 40 wasn't hard for me to reach, but 30 was. Because when I got out of my 20s, I don't know, 30 was just hard for me. Then I get to 40 and think, surely, I'll meet some. And honestly, in my 30s, I stopped worrying about meeting somebody. Because by the time I got 35, I had teenagers. Because I had my kids young. I had little kids, some in, elementary school, but teenagers. So I was going to sports and involved in helping them with their homework. And I had a job working at the school. And I was involved in the church heavily. And not necessarily ministering, but I was involved. And what I mean was, I was ministering, but I'm not sure I was really ministering because I was really lonely and bitter inside. But I was going through the motions, and they thought I was okay. I knew I wasn't, though. But as long as I showed up and did what I was supposed to do, they were happy with me. But I knew that I wasn't I didn't have the peace of God. But in my 30s, I was so busy I didn't have time to think about having a man. Once in a while would he hit me, but most of the time my life was filled. I was starting, and in my 40s, I still had teenage kids, and I had aging parents. So I had them to take care of. And both of my parents died of cancer. And took care of them, took them to their doctor's appointments, spent months at the hospital. So I was real busy. And I was hurting really bad. But I kept going because I'm strong, and I have to be strong for my children. and for my parents and for everybody else. So I did it. I did it, and I didn't complain. I might have cried when no one saw me, but I didn't cry in front of people. And I get to be 40, and then 45, and then 50, and he didn't come. And now I am 58 years old. I am 2 years from 60. And Mr. Right never came in my life. And most of the time I'm okay with that. But every once in a while it'll hit me that you don't even know what it's like to be married. And you're almost 60 years old. I mean, and when I raise my children, I'm going to have to cut this video short and do part 2 because it doesn't post for very long. And I got something to say because I believe somebody will benefit from it. And if not, I'll benefit from telling it. And click off if I talk too much and you're not interested. It's okay. But when I had my children, I always wanted God to give me somebody. Their dad wasn't really a good father, and he wasn't in their life, and he was absent in more ways than one. And I thought, let me, God give me a husband who will be a stepdad to my children and be a father figure to them and teach my son how to be a man and teach my daughters what to look for in a man. And then they all grew up, and it never happened. And I raised them and there was a loss in the family. Now, yeah, I sinned. So did the man. I repented, but I still had the consequence. Now, I would have given anything and thanked God every day for a man who would love me and my kids. But it didn't happen. And I had to deal. And it wasn't easy. And one of the things that bothered me the most for you young girls who are thinking about doing whatever you want to do and not listening to God, because sometimes we do get that way. I'm just going to go find somebody. I don't care what God says. We don't say it like that, but we do it. And I have before. Because you're sick and tired of, not lately. No, I don't go do that now, but I'm sick and tired of waiting on God, and I'm going to go find my own self somebody. Well, what happens is you hurt worse when that doesn't work than you did before you started. Now, I have a lot more to say about it, but my children grew up without their dad, and that hurt me. That hurt them, and that hurt me. And then here came the grandchildren. I was 39 and a grandmother. That young. I was a young grandma. And I looked at that grandbaby. And he is the love of my life. He's 18 years old now. He is that's my boy. And he never had a granddad. His own grandfather on his mother's side was no good at all and never was around him, and thank God he wasn't. And then he never had a grandfather on my side, because see, when men aren't good fathers, they're not good grandfathers either. They're the same kind of grandfather they are father. If they're non-existent, absent, going on with their lives, they do the same thing to their grandkids. And it hurt me all over again. And there was something about the fact that I was a grandmother. A grandmother, not a mother, a grandmother, before I was a wife. That bothered me greatly. I don't know. Maybe none of you have this story. I'm just telling you, raw and uncut. For you women who are thinking about leaving what God said to go have sex because you're tired of being alone. A whole lot of people get hurt when you disobey God. Now, he turns it around for the good, and your children can be a blessing. But that wasn't his original intent for it to be like that. I know he created my children, but they were supposed to have a good dad. And they did have a good mother. I was a good mother. I did the very, very, very best I could. But I couldn't be mother and father both. So that's some of the hurts that fornication brought to me. Now I have more to this story if you're interested. This is part 1. And I'm going to stop it right here because if it's too long, it won't post. And this might not even post, but I'll talk to you later. This is part 1. I'm going to do part 2. Blessings.